Start in just a moment. All right.
Oops.
Okay, and Phil, if you can let anyone else in the waiting room in, I think we'll get started in just a moment here. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Cool, thank you. And you can see the presentation.
Yes.
All right. And I just want to ask that everyone make sure that they are on mute. And I just thank you so much for being here today as well. Let's see. All right. All right, well, everyone, thank you so much for being here. This is the Service and Wellness presentation presented by LeaderCorps. We have 6 members, LeaderCorps members, Michigan AmeriCorps members here from across the state, and we came together to put together a presentation. Just really quickly, make sure that you're on mute, please. So we came together to put together this presentation on self-care and really self-care as it pertains to our service activities and our wellness overall. So really, thank you. So please make sure that you're on mute, like I said, and if you could, in just a moment, for just right now, I want to ask you all, what do you think self-care is, or what does self-care and wellness mean to you? It's a pretty big topic. It's a subject that's full of a lot of different modes of thought and a lot of different ideas. And I'm just wondering kind of what people think in general about this, because there's a lot to say, to be honest with you. And this is a topic that we could not even do or complete or get done. We could never like exhaust the topic, I guess, in just an hour and a half. But we will be sharing some of what we've kind of boiled down to, maybe essential wisdom, some just tips and strategies, and different kind of ways of thinking about your care. So my name is Nick Bruckman. I'm with CETM AmeriCorps. I serve in Owasso, and I will be introducing all of the other speakers and people who helped put this together, this presentation together, in just a few minutes. But first I want to go through just a couple things. So we see that, okay, so taking care of yourself by relaxing, getting your hair done, getting a pedicure. Yes, definitely. Self-care can be taking time to take care of your mental and physical health. Yeah, putting your health and well-being first. Yeah, thank you. And Phil, I don't know if you're able to, but if you can, would you, is it possible that you copy and paste any of these responses into our Google Doc? If not, that's okay. We will figure that out later.
Yeah, I am doing that right now. So
thank you so much.
Yeah,
I appreciate
no
that. I really do. All right, so reading, spending time with your family, your pets, hiking, fitness, creative things, spiritual things as well. That's true. And practicing things to show up as your best self every day. I love that. Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways to think about self-care. And oh, Give me 1 second, please. And there's kind of like a big why as to why put this, this presentation together. So first off, there are a lot of challenges to being an AmeriCorps member. We recognize that the nature of AmeriCorps service includes challenges that present themselves over the course of the year and require a lot of strategies and resources to support your personal well-being and care, which help you reach your goals. And because AmeriCorps members contribute so much to their host communities, their own communities, to the world around them, that it's something to really, it's really an area of focus that we should really kind of be paying close attention to, probably more attention than we realize. Because as self-care, or as the care of others goes up, so too must our self-care routine and strategies for doing so. And also, I always say that without wellness, there is absolutely no contribution, because if we are not well, if we're not functioning, there's no way that we'll be able to really give back or even, give it all. So self-care is a lot of different things, but ultimately it's the ways that we take care of ourselves and the only ways that we can. Nobody can do self-care for us. People can encourage wellness, but they can't do the work for us. And it can kind of be thought of as a pathway that's created by strategies that lead to wellness. And so what is that wellness? Well, it's kind of a spectrum of being, and that's achieved through self-care. Through wellness, we move from surviving to thriving, if you will. And there are many roads, there's many ways to build your path. When I was coming up with this logo that I created, and we created together actually, to promote our presentation, I was thinking of all the different ways that self-care and the strategies that we take care of ourselves kind of combine and come together. And so we see that we focus on a sort of mental, physical, and a sort of spiritual aspects of self-care and wellness. And somewhere they all intersect, interline, and kind of come together to build that wellness. So I just wanted to take a second to introduce everyone who worked so hard on this. My name is Nick Bruckman. Like I said, I'm a Seat of AmeriCorps member serving in Owasso, Michigan with Owasso Main Street. And I am focusing on the foundational aspects and concluding our presentation today. Then we have Zara Parati, who is with the Ingham County Health Department, AmeriCorps, and she's going to be focusing on mental health. Next, we have Phil Huang, who will be focusing on nutrition. Next, Alicia Burns, who will be focusing on exercise and movement. Stephanie Phillips, or Steph Phillips, really, will be focusing on boundaries and kind of those boundaries which help us promote our own well-being. And Keith McDarmid would normally be focusing on spirituality or the spiritual aspects of self-care and wellness. He will be contributing to a wellness guide that we put together for everyone and that we're still kind of in the process of creating. And at the end of this presentation, we will give you an opportunity to share your email address, and so we can get that to you if you're interested. So with that said, I'd like to pass it over to Zaire, and she will be talking about mental health.
Thank you, Nick. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me and see me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. So, hello, everyone. My name is Zaire Parati, and it is a pleasure to be with you all today. So in this first segment of the presentation, we are going to discuss the importance and steps of checking in with your mental health during your AmeriCorps journey. Next slide, please. So why does mental health matter? So mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. It helps determine how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and how we make healthy choices. Mental health is important at every stage of your life, but especially your AmeriCorps stage. Next slide, please. So as AmeriCorps members, we are all expected to check in with our supervisors. However, most of us forget to check in with ourselves. And the perfect time to check in with your mental health is any time, whether it's going well or not so well. But of course, there are moments that cause more stress to you than others during your service term. It is said that your AmeriCorps year will be the hardest year you will ever love. So, but whether or not you believe or agree with that statement, it's important to take care of your mental health during those hard times of your service. Whether you are dealing with conflicting personalities, feelings of loneliness in your host site, or dealing with work-life imbalance, there are many ways to check in with your mental health in any circumstance. It's also important to check in when you are at peace or when you are experiencing joy. Taking note of what that feels like and being grateful in that moment are also great mental exercises for your brain. So the next few slides are going to go through just a few ways to check in with yourself. So it's important to keep in mind that these examples will not make your mental health issues just go away in a flash. Mental health issues can accumulate and expand and weigh heavy on your life and your relationships. So what I'm here to do is to give you examples of ways to practice checking in, but it is up to you to use these examples now and consistently over time. Next slide, please. So the first way to check in with yourself is with other people. When most people think of mental health resources, the first thing that comes to mind is therapy. Therapy is a wonderful way to talk through your issues in a confidential way with a professional. I personally see a therapist and have been for 5 years now, and it has helped me grow in many ways, but especially when talking through my relationships with others around me. However, we understand that therapy is not accessible to all or even understood to all. Next slide. Now, I can't personally recommend any particular therapist or counselor, but I can let you know what kind of tools and topics therapists use for their clients. They like to give toolkits or guides, mental exercises, worksheets, books on multiple topics to their clients to work on. So on this slide, I have an example of a grounding exercise worksheet that I have used before from my therapist. It's the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. And some people may have heard of this, but this technique purposely takes you into detail of your surroundings using questions. So, for example, what are the 5 things you can see? What are the 4 things you can feel? What are the 3 things you can hear? What are the 2 things you can smell? And lastly, what is 1 thing you can taste? So these resources and more will be available to you after the presentation, like Nick said. Next slide, please. Journaling. So the second way to check in with yourself is through journaling. Journaling is a popular way to release whatever is in your heart and mind into writing. Journaling helps to reduce stress, provides a way to process emotions, maps out your next steps, deepens your self-discovery, and much more. Next slide. So there is no perfect way to journal, no perfect way to write a diary, or no expectations on what or how it has to look for it to be helpful to you. These are just examples of prompts to start off with if you feel stuck. This is especially helpful for those who have never journaled before. I personally like the 1 sentence a day journal because I don't have to worry about writing an entire essay on what my day was like. Next slide, please. So the third way to check in is through mindfulness. Mindfulness is a state of paying close attention to the present. It's about observing your thoughts and your feelings without judging them as good or bad. This can be helpful after you may have had a difficult conversation with a colleague or client or your supervisor. Next slide, please. So this is just a sample of exercises you can do to bring your mind back to reality or what is right in front of you. So, for example, instead of emotionally eating, which I do a lot, you can mindfully eat and be present with your food. Instead of rushing and speed walking to your next destination, you take your time, walk slowly, be mindful of your surroundings while you're walking. Personally, as an overthinker and someone who worries a lot, the 5 senses exercise or the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method was a technique that helped me for years. Next slide. So the fourth way to check in with yourself is through your own breath. I think breathing is probably the most underrated way to relax and calm your mind. Sometimes it's the best way to process extreme emotions at the very moment you are having them. So the next slide will have a few techniques you can use whenever you feel overwhelmed. Next slide. So these breathing exercises don't solve the problem, but it can help you be mentally and physically ready to solve that problem that's right in front of you. The 4-7-8 breathing method is something I have personally used before in many stressful situations. Is when you inhale for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 7 seconds, and then exhale for 8 seconds. You can do this anywhere without drawing any attention to yourself, but I especially like to do this whenever I am by myself or preparing for a presentation to calm my nerves. Next slide, please. So the fifth and last way to check in is through spending time in nature. Spending time in green spaces or bringing nature into your everyday life can benefit both your mental and physical well-being. It can improve your mood. It can reduce feelings of stress and anger. It can help take you out, take some time out and feel more relaxed, help you be more active, and help you feel more connected to something bigger than yourself. Next slide. So this is by far my favorite way to check in with myself. I am not the most active person I know, but I love a good walk in a natural environment. There are many ways to add more green into your life. You can grow small plants. You can simply walk outdoors around your own house or be around animals. They all provide lots of positive effects. Next slide. So what all of these techniques and tools have in common is that they all provide an opportunity to release whatever you are holding in, whether it's your thoughts, your emotions, or your story. The more you suppress them, the more it suppresses you. And as an AmeriCorps member, you are expected to serve the community. But in order for that to happen, however, we must serve our mental health first. So thank you for being in my TED Talk, or thank you so much for listening and being present with me. And now I'm going to pass it on to Alicia on physical wellness.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for going over some ways that we can take care of ourselves mentally. I am here to introduce self-care in a physical aspect because, as Zay mentioned, to take care of ourselves and to allow ourselves to thrive our body entirely, physical health is just as important as mental health. So go ahead, Nick, to our next slide. I love this quote. It says, to care for one's body and to keep it healthy is to love oneself. Oftentimes, we recognize what our bodies can do for us, but we don't always recognize what we can do for our bodies. And so one of those things needed is movement. Movement is needed for our body to thrive, and we usually are working against ourselves actually when we aren't moving. So we are adding to our stress levels by not doing so. So with that, I'm going to switch the mindset a little bit. If Nick, you could go to the next slide. We know how important it is to be physically active, but we often don't realize the effects of a sedentary lifestyle. And that's because there's so much out there about how to move and what you should be doing. But I wanted to emphasize how much we work against ourselves when we are, sorry, Nick, when we are sedentary. So much so that a sedentary lifestyle increases our death rate just by 71%. And then on the flip side, people who sit for 30 minutes or less at a time, so that means that you are sitting for about 20 minutes or so and then getting up and moving, already decrease their death risk by 55%. So sometimes statistics and numbers can freak us out a little bit, but I wanted to include them because it really does show the difference it makes just when we move our body a little bit. And I don't mean like you have to be in the gym and lifting weights and running 10 miles, just not even sitting all the time already starts to make such a difference for us. And I also wanted to emphasize that sedentary lifestyles can make such a negative impact on our mental health. So that's what I meant by we don't often realize that we're working against ourselves when we actually aren't moving, because by not moving physically and mentally, our bodies decline. So we can take care of our mental health just as much as we can take care of our physical health, and the two go very hand in hand. So go to the next slide, please, Nick. On the other side, there are multiple benefits of regular physical activity. Oftentimes, these are some that we don't hear about. We know that we can become very strong, we can lose weight, it helps with our appetite, but there's so much more that physical activity does for us. And one of those is mood enhancing benefits. So exercise, when we do exercise, the part of our brain that regulates stress, it actually produces changes to that part of our brain, which is really, really cool. And it increases our hormones of serotonin and norepinephrine, which are all levels of all hormones that, you know, relate to our anxiety, our stress, our depression. So the lower those levels are, the more likely we are to struggle with those feelings. So exercise is going to boost all of those hormones, and that's going to immediately enhance our mood. Exercise also is energy boosting. So we see this energy boost the most often immediately following exercise. So if you're having a really bad day and you know that you need to do something to take care of yourself, exercise. And it doesn't have to be, like I said, going to the gym for an hour and lifting up weights and doing something you've never done before. It can be like a walk, like Zay said, and you're going to feel that great energy boost after. So another benefit of exercise is an improvement in brain function and memory. This is really, really cool, actually, because what happens when we exercise, our heart has to pump more blood. And as our heart is pumping more blood, we are going to see a delivery of oxygen to our working muscles. And our brain is a major muscle. So just as much as we have to work all of the muscles in our body, we have to work our brain as well. And exercise does that. So we're going to see an improvement in our brain function through exercising, which is going to cause an improvement in our stress, our memory, all of the things that sometimes we are lacking because we're just all in our head. So exercise can help us take a step back. And the thing that might be a little confusing here is that exercise also helps us see an improvement in sleep. So the energy boosting effects come immediately after exercise, and the improvement in sleep quality typically come a few hours following exercise. That once again goes back to our blood having to boost up more. So as that slows down, and our body starts to come back to homeostasis, or its regular way of functioning, our body will also start to feel the effects of the exercise that you just went through, and it will be ready to rest. We have a whole section on sleep later on, so I won't go too into that. But Nick, if you would like to go to the next slide. So a quick synopsis of what it is that our body needs the most to thrive when it comes to exercise can be broken down into 3 examples, basically. So the first one is a mix of moderate intensity aerobic activity and a mix of muscle strengthening activities. So the moderate activity you're going to want to be doing for about 150 minutes. That's fully in a week. So if you think about it, that could be 30 minutes a day, however it makes you happy. And I'll go into some examples later. And then 2 days of muscle strengthening activities. And the muscle strengthening activities should be full body muscle strengthening activities. So then you can do what is listed in example 2 of vigorous intensity aerobic activity. If you're working at a vigorous level, your body actually only needs 75 minutes of that. So you are cutting that time in half, working at a harder level, technically, but you do still need 2 muscle strengthening activities a week. And then, as always, you can combine the 2. So you can do some moderate activity and some vigorous activity, whatever you feel you need that day, or you can do that day. And then 2 muscle strengthening activities during the week. And a quick tip on if you're trying to figure out if you're working at a moderate or vigorous level without tracking your heart rate or getting an Apple Watch or anything like that, just use a talk test. The talk test is basically when you are doing any aerobic activity, talk to yourself, talk to a friend, and if you are breathing hard, but you can hold a conversation kind of easily, you're probably at a moderate intensity. If you can only get a few words out before you need to take a next breath, or you really can't even hold a conversation, you're at a vigorous level. So quick and easy way just to kind of test yourself and see where you're working your body. Go ahead to the next slide. So what counts? I have already said a couple of times, you don't need to be in the gym necessarily. You don't have to go buy a gym membership. There are so many things that count that we don't even realize count as physical activity that we're doing already. So this could be things that you have to do anyways. So cleaning up your yard, doing some housework. If you have pets, taking your pets out for a walk. As well as things that don't feel like exercise. And this is one of my favorite ways to introduce exercise to people is it could be gardening. It could be dancing around your house. It could be, once again, still taking your dog for a walk. Things that get you moving that aren't regularly listed as exercise forms. And I do just want to add, if you are new to moving and you don't live a very active lifestyle, please always check in with your doctor before doing so. Anybody that struggles with a chronic condition should always just check with their doctor to make sure that they are safely okay to move to a moderate or vigorous physical activity level. You can go to the next slide. So being active for you is one of the most important things you could do when you're looking to become physically active, but also when you're using physical activity as a form of self-care. Because if you are dreading the exercise that you're doing, it's not going to feel like you're taking care of yourself. So here are some easy tips to kind of transition into physical activity, to start using that and utilizing it as self-care. So the first thing could be just aiming to sit for 4 hours or less a day. As I said earlier, sitting less already helps our body so much. So some things you can do, especially if you have a job, in AmeriCorps that you're sitting a lot at the office. I'm not sure, we all have different positions, but that can be just, standing up at your desk even and typing away at the emails or taking calls. It can also be switching out the chair that you use and using like an exercise ball instead. It could be performing stretches at your desk or squats or little exercises, anything just to kind of get you up and moving. Another tip is aiming for a step count of 7,000 to 9,000 steps. What is really cool about this that we don't often realize is the health benefits that come from our step count oftentimes are the same health benefits that we get from working out 150 minutes of moderate exercise. So what I just told you is what our body needs to thrive. We can also get just from reaching a 9,000 step goal. So pretty cool fun fact. It goes to show that you just need to move your body and your body is going to love it. Another tip that I have is daily stretching. So that can be in, your time of trying to sit less. Or if you already find that you're a pretty active person and you're not stretching your body, please do. Your body needs some of that extra stretching to feel comfortable and relieve the stress that it's holding inside of it. And another tip is do things that make you happy, but allow yourself to be challenged. Like I said, if you are trying to use physical activity as a form of self-care, you might find it difficult and challenging at times to even get yourself to move, and that's okay. Do something that makes you happy. If you enjoy gardening, for example, please go out and garden. That's your physical activity for the day. And that's your check in the box that you took care of yourself. And as time goes on, then you can find those challenges to keep it moving. I did see a question and I just want to make sure I answer that. Is the 9,000 steps supposed to be done per? So our 9,000 step count is a daily step count. So you would be taking 7,000 to 9,000 steps a day versus the 150 minutes in a week. But they're all different perspectives to kind of look at. I always like including the step count because sometimes you can't find 150 minutes in your week to work out, and that's okay. But you can find a lot of ways to get up and step and move around. So if the 7,000 to 9,000 step count works better for you, start with that. All right, Nick, go ahead to the next slide. So a couple more, the slide before that was more about, being active for you and enjoying it versus like real tips and tricks of getting into physical activity. So these are some tips and tricks as, you're finding yourself enjoying your physical activity and you want to keep it going. And this is how you can do so in, a healthy and safe way. One of those is setting goals for yourself. A big thing when we find that we're going from a sedentary to an active lifestyle is we overwhelm ourselves. We think, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. I'm going to walk 10,000 steps. I'm going to run 5 miles, whatever it is. And your body doesn't know how to do that yet. So start with small goals and start by taking small action steps so that you don't exhaust your body trying to give it more energy, Another thing is remember your why. Oftentimes we look at exercise as being more physically exhausting than energy giving. So remember your why of why you're exercising. Like I said early on, sedentary lifestyles cause so many problems than we realize. So your why could be as simple as, I am defeating my stress by taking this walk. You're not defeating your stress all at once, but you're defeating the stress that you're feeling in that moment by taking that walk for yourself. That kind of also goes into the tip and trick of the mindset. So identify personal reasons of why you want to be there, but also try to stay mindful while you work out. This is really important because it takes all of the ruminating thoughts that we have and turns your exercise, your workout into a meaningful, purposeful time for you to take care of yourself. And then if you still have thoughts running after, you can use some tips and tricks like Zay said on journaling and going out in nature. Go back to her slides for those resources. And my last tip and trick is the changes that we see when we start to transition from a sedentary to active lifestyle. And this is because we're making behavioral changes. We are changing our habits and we are doing things for ourselves when we oftentimes put ourselves on the back burners. I'm sure that's why a lot of you are here. It's because we need to know how to take care of ourselves. So, that behavioral change of putting yourself first, whether it is physical or mental well-being, is going to help us feel empowered and hopeful about our personal futures more on and more so. So just one step forward can make 10 different steps along the way. I have a couple resources, and Nick, if you go to the next slide, when we are done, we will be sending out more resources. But one thing that I did want to emphasize, especially being with Michigan Special Olympics, serving with them through AmeriCorps, is Special Olympics of Michigan is an adapted fitness option. So if that's something that you need, or somebody that is looking into adapted fitness options at no cost, if you or somebody has an intellectual disability, you can join Special Olympics of Michigan, and it is an amazing statewide organization. So if you have any questions about that, I am also a person to contact. But that is all I have to say. Thank you. Oh, yes, the polar plunges are awesome. Thank you, Heidi. But yeah, so I hope you all learned a little bit something on the importance of taking care of yourself physically and some fun ways to do so.
All right, for the next part of the presentation, I'm going to pass it over to Phil. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And here we go.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
I can see it just fine.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, let's get started. First of all, thank you so much, Alicia, for that amazing presentation about exercise and being fit. And I just want to continue on this theme of physical wellness now as we pivot to another important aspect of that, which is nutrition. So my name is Phil Huang again, quick disclaimer is that I am not a professional dietitian, so do not take any of this as medical advice, although these are just more of general suggestions and reminders of why nutrition matters and how we can improve it. So as many of you probably know, nutrition is important for us. We eat a lot. And I think, most of us, if not all of us, have meals frequently. And so, eating is definitely an important part of our lives. But yeah, why does nutrition matter? Well, one important aspect of that is that it supports your immune system. So it helps your body fight infection or cells in your body that might be toxic. And it also promotes a healthy heart, which obviously is important to prevent conditions such as heart disease in the future. It also affects your mood and energy levels. And so sometimes nutrition can help make us feel more tired, more drowsy, depending on what we're putting in our bodies. Other times it can make us feel happier. And of course, the best is when you're eating something that's both healthy and delicious, as I think you all know. That's a very satisfying thing. And finally, it lowers the risk of chronic health issues, as I mentioned, heart disease or stroke, diabetes, hypertension. All of these things can often be somewhat prevented through having good nutrition. So how can I improve my nutrition? I think that's the question that really is a little more difficult to answer. A lot of us know why nutrition is a good thing, but how can we get to that point? That can be challenging. So the first tip is to balance your meals. And so just in general, obviously for some people, you might be asked or recommended to do a specific diet. So obviously that I think can be important, but in general, just having balance in what you're eating and just being able to ensure that you're getting all the necessary nutrients is really important. And also it just makes what you eat a lot more interesting because you're varying those ingredients. And so to move on to the next point, similarly varying your fruits and veggies. So oftentimes we talk about the importance of eating fruits and veggies, but often it can get kind of a little intimidating because fruits and veggies might not necessarily be what we like to eat all the time. For some people, it's a challenge maybe to cook a veggie, to be able to season it correctly. But one thing that you can do to make it more interesting is just to try out different kinds of fruits, different kinds of veggies. If you go to produce aisle or section, oftentimes, sometimes they have grocery discounts or deals where you can try out different types of vegetables, and that vary from week to week. Another thing that you can do to improve your nutrition is to reduce the amount of fried foods and saturated fats you're eating, things that have a lot of grease, a lot of butter, a lot of oil. These things obviously taste delicious. But it also is, these are things that are not necessarily great, especially for your heart. And so just trying to reduce how much you're eating of those things can definitely help out with that. Drinking water is definitely important, staying hydrated, but also trying not to drink too many beverages that have lots and lots of sugar. We usually think of very sweet items like donuts or pastries, and these are things that are very sugary. But oftentimes sodas can have even more sugar content than a lot of those solid food items. And it's so easy to just, take, like a McDonald's large, soda and just like go through the whole thing. And before you know it, you've accumulated a bunch of sugar. The sugar content for some of those drinks is pretty insane. So, trying to avoid that can definitely help. Another way to improve your nutrition is to spice up your meals. And so this is one of my favorite ways to approach improving my nutrition, because I think, this is where you can get creative here, and this is where you can explore. And so, for instance, trying to put lemon juice or trying different spice mixes. There's a bunch of them, like Cajun seasoning, garam masala, and, just making your own spice mix. That can be something you can try out. And, more often than not, I think it usually makes the food taste better. Even when it's something that maybe you've never tried before, it usually works out. Another thing is trying whole grains. Quinoa is something that can be used to substitute for rice or for other grains. Oats are good, and there's different kinds of whole grains out there as well that are not as well known. Millet is one that comes to mind, that can be used to kind of substitute for some of the more traditional grains that we usually consume. I have a couple more of these hints or of these tips. The next one is watching out for sodium and sugars that might not be very obvious. So for this one, I'm thinking usually processed foods or frozen TV dinners. These are things that, or ramen noodles. If you even take one small serving portion of that usually has a lot of sodium or a lot of sugar or both. And the reason why a lot of these TV dinners or processed snacks taste so good is just because they have so much salt and a lot of sugar. But it adds up very quickly, and so that can be pretty dangerous if you don't watch out for that. And finally, always be getting some protein as well, not only just to build muscle, but just to ensure that you're maintaining the correct concentration of amino acids in your body. So having protein, can be acquired through meat. You can also get it through soy products. You can get it through different kinds of legumes as well. And so protein is definitely an important part of nutrition. All right, so here's another one. I think I forgot to transition that fifth point. So I guess I'll start with the fifth point, which is have fun. So I will say, when you're trying to work on your nutrition or your diet, it can be sometimes intimidating. And so I think one thing to remember is that, this is your chance to explore. This is your chance to really figure out what you like to eat, and to take what you like to eat and combine that with, trying to improve your health. And so I think once you figure out, what works for you, that can be very invigorating. That can be really exciting to do. And so really exploring that it can be a process, but it can be a fun process. So one thing I would recommend, just through my experience of trying to make my own food and trying to cook different kinds of dishes over the past few years, one thing is to keep it simple. So, if you're trying to improve your diet or work on something, focus on a couple of things that are important. Like for me, for instance, instead of worrying about, how much carbs should I take in, how many calories should I count? Right now, I've been just trying to see, focus in on eating fruits, veggies, and proteins, and cutting out anything else from my diet, like no processed foods or, pretty much anything else that is not fresh. And so because of that, I'm able to kind of like simplify things, and I'm just looking for those fresh fruits, proteins, and veggies that I can add to my meals. Another thing is to stock up on frozen produce. And so this is not frozen TV dinners. This is like frozen veggies, frozen fruits. These are things that, can last long in the freezer. And so for someone who might be short on time, then this might be a quick and cheap way for you to get those healthy veggies and fruits without worrying about them spoiling. Because at least for me, I have this chronic issue of whenever I buy fruits, I always tend to buy too much, and then a couple of them end up rotting in the fridge. So I think having that frozen alternative can definitely help. For some of us, having to worry about how expenses can be a thing, especially when you're figuring out, how how do I plan for my meals? And so, one thing you can do to help you budget is to take a look at your store's weekly discounts. And so if there's a fruit or veggie that's on sale, you can just buy that and then plan your recipes based on those discounted products. And finally, practice cooking with a few recipes. And so obviously there's so many great recipes out there, and there's many different ways you can approach healthy cooking. I will say that, if you can master a couple healthy and easy to make recipes, then once you get into routine and get really good at those few recipes, then it gets really easy, I think, to then expand on your skill set. Cooking is a skill, and it takes time to master those techniques and be able to cook using maybe the correct spices, or cooking for the correct amount of time. I think having that skill set definitely can help make it easier to make healthy dishes. So here's a proverb that I saw that I thought is pretty pertinent to this discussion. Basically, when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. When diet is correct, medicine is of no need. So obviously we don't want to get to the point where we have to see the doctor as often as we could if we're sick. So diet definitely is a big part of keeping ourselves healthy and making sure that we're living that wellness that we're talking about here. So I'm going to take a little break. If you can put in the chat, is there any favorite healthy dish that you've made or eaten in the past that you would suggest to other people to try out? So you can put that in the chat. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that as I take a little break here. All right, looks like Steph put down mango dressing. That sounds amazing. I've never tried that before, but that looks so good. I love that combination: mango, cilantro, olive oil, lime juice.
Phil, it is so good. Oh my goodness. My husband makes it for me regularly. So
I gotta try that. That looks absolutely delicious. Lots of salads here. Yes, absolutely. Salad with pickled beets and goat cheese. That is really interesting as well. Tuscan kale salad, cucumber and avocado sushi rolls. Yes, those are always good. Pesto mozzarella sandwiches. Amazing. All right, so for the sake of time, y'all can keep putting things down in the chat, but I will move on to our next topic here. And so we're kind of play a little puzzle here. I'll have you guess this condition. So we're talking medical conditions, I guess. I'll give you a few hints, and you can type down in the chat what you think this condition might be. The first hint is that this condition is linked to a higher risk of heart disease, kidney disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, and obesity. This condition contributed to disasters such as Chernobyl, the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and a chemical plant in disaster in India. Another hint is that this condition is cited as a cause of many medical errors threatening the health and safety of patients. If you want to start guessing in the chat, you can go ahead. Okay, I think Nick, you might have gotten it. Oh yeah, driving with this condition can be as dangerous as drunk driving. Yes, it is sleep deprivation, which is something I think that a lot of us might, suffer from or deal with pretty constantly. So why is sleep so important? There's quite a few reasons that for why sleep is so important. So sleep is important because when you sleep, our hunger hormones are better controlled. So there's two hormones in the body that are quite relevant to managing your hunger. There's one called ghrelin that makes you feel hungry, and there's one called leptin that makes you feel full. And so when you sleep, the ghrelin hormone, which makes you feel hungry, is reduced, and its levels are reduced. And so you have less of that desire to eat. And in the meantime, the leptin levels of leptin increase. So you basically feel more full and less hungry as you sleep. And so kind of helps you control your appetite and makes you feel less wanting to, eat more, which can be good especially if you're trying to improve your nutrition. Another thing, when you sleep, your insulin function gets promoted. So your body is kind of able to help prevent insulin resistance, which is something that could lead to diabetes. So basically, it helps you manage your blood sugar levels better. And finally, your body makes antibodies and immune cells that help fight infection. And so I think sleep is so important for this reason that, it just allows you to fight a lot of those viruses and bacteria or different pathogens that you can come across. But another part of sleep, I think that a lot of people might not realize is also it's good for the mind. And so when you sleep, your brain clears out toxic waste that builds up during the day. It also converts short-term memories into long-term memories. So it helps you really remember and encapsulate a lot of those things that you encounter in your life. It also erases unneeded info that might clutter the nervous system. And finally, brain activity increases in areas that regulate emotion. And so this one is pretty interesting, I think, because recently some scientists, they've been doing like scans of the brain and really trying to figure out what goes on when you sleep. And so they found out that when you're sleeping, there are certain parts of the brain that are important for regulating emotion. So one of them, for instance, is the amygdala. Amygdala is a part of the brain that really contributes to the fear response. And so, if you start feeling anxious or, or scared for something, that part of the brain kind of lights up. So what they found is that areas like the amygdala actually have increased activity when you're sleeping, which, they're still trying to figure out exactly what that means, but it suggests that your body, your brain is kind of trying to regulate emotions as you're sleeping, process those emotions. Another thing that they found is that when you're sleeping, there is a hormone called norepinephrine. And so this is the one of the hormones that is responsible for the fight or flight response. So when you're really stressed, when you're really anxious, you feel a lot more alert and you feel a lot more restless. That hormone has higher levels in your body. But when you're sleeping, your body actually clears out that hormone. You have lower levels of norepinephrine, which is great because now you feel more less anxious, and you feel more restful and more at ease. So it definitely is really essential to helping you manage your stress and making sure you have proper levels of these hormones. So knowing all of these benefits of sleep, now, I guess the more important question is, how do I get better sleep? And so just a few tips here that could possibly help. One of them is just to maintain a consistent sleep schedule. This one can be pretty difficult considering a lot of us have busy schedules, might be working multiple jobs or positions and, have lots of different responsibilities, but just having that ability to, go to bed at, the same time every night and wake up at the same time every morning can really help your body adjust and really sleep well. And another thing to help you sleep is, of course, reducing those distractions like visual distractions, audio distractions, also not eating too much right before you sleep, and of course, avoiding caffeine and alcohol as well can be helpful. Getting exercise also can help you get better sleep. And this is something I kind of like because it basically is the idea of you make yourself more tired by exhausting yourself through exercise. And because you're more exhausted, now you want to sleep. And so it kind of actually helps you in that way. And of course, there's a lot of resources that can be used to help out with the sleeping. Personally, I've recently or previously tried using sleep apps. And so there's some sleep apps that monitor your sleep like rhythms, the waves, the patterns of like how you sleep, which can help with recognizing or identifying whether you have issues with getting like proper sleep, whether you're getting enough sleep cycles into your sleep schedule. Sleep therapy can also be a great way to help improve that. So I'll give you guys an opportunity now to describe in the chat what's your bedtime routine, or what is one thing that you do to help you get better sleep. So if you could put that down in the chat. All right. I take trazodone. Yes, that definitely can help. Listen to a podcast called Nothing Much Happens that helps you fall asleep. Awesome. Oh, twice a day I look at the clock and then cry. All right, anyone else that have oh yeah, ASMR, yes, that's definitely one that can help a lot. Love a good soft podcast or soft jazz. Definitely music can be relaxing. Changes to my pajamas, less lights on, relax with my cats. Yeah, I put my head on the pillow, I don't sleep in 5 minutes. That's awesome. Writing a few things about my day to clear my mind. Yeah, absolutely. I think that can, just like for me, it's, reflecting on how my day has been and just kind of like, recapping on that kind of like provides a sense of closure and mentally prepares myself for sleeping. Meditation, snacks, no screen time, 1 hour prior to bedtime. Meditation, hypnosis, turning on the fan, keeping my room cool. Yeah, temperature can also be a big thing for sure. All right, all of these are great responses. Thank you for sharing those. And so I think now I'll hand it over to Stephanie. I'll stop sharing my screen so Nick can take over.
Thank you, Phil. Hey, Steph, give me just 1 second, okay? I'm going to click some buttons here.
No problem.
Thanks. Oops. Okay, can you all see my screen okay?
Well, it says loading.
Oh. Oops. Loading. Let me try again. I'm sorry, maybe I pushed the wrong thing.
I see it fine.
Oh, you see it fine?
Yes.
Now I see it. Maybe click where it says, maybe click slideshow. Oh,
Is it loading now, or does it work okay?
Looks good.
Okay, thanks.
It says loading.
yeah, I see
Oh.
it loading also.
Okay, let me click on the slideshow. I'm
on
sorry,
now.
I was,
Yeah, it works now.
but
We
you
can
guys
see it.
but it's not in slideshow mode, right?
No, it's not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me just 1 second.
No
Let's see,
problem.
where is the slideshow button?
It's on the upper right corner,
Oh,
just to
upper
the left
right.
of
I have it.
share.
Oh, there we go. I have it hidden because I've got all these things on there. Thank you. Can you see it okay now, Steph?
No, it still says loading on my end.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, guys. Give me a
Yeah, I
second.
got just loading too.
I appreciate that. I do. What I'll do is exit full screen. Do this. I'm going to share my screen again. And then I'm going to click on slideshow. Can you all see that? Okay.
No.
Still loading. If you want, I can share my screen because I have my full screen open. So I
Okay,
can
go
click through the
ahead.
slides instead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing then. And I'm going to, in the meantime, after Steph is done, I'll go ahead and try and take it back again, but I know we have time. Go ahead. Phil. Thank you.
Did you all see that?
Yeah.
Yep. Now we're
Awesome.
good. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Phil. I appreciate it. And I'm really glad I didn't have to do any screen sharing because it would be a total disaster. I promise you that. So, hey everyone, my name is Steph, and I will be talking about personal boundaries during this segment of our training. I will be addressing mental, physical, and spiritual boundaries, personal boundaries within different relationships, and how boundaries are an important part of self-care. Next, please. Okay, so what are boundaries, right? Personal boundaries can be described as the limits and rules we set for ourselves within relationships and everyday life. Boundaries are also being able to say no, no, no when the situation doesn't feel right inside. You always have the right to say no, even if other people are trying to make you feel like you don't have that right. You definitely have the right to say no. Next. So next we'll talk about some examples of 3 types of healthy boundaries: mental, physical, and spiritual. Next. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. Oh, there it is. Okay, so a few examples of mental boundaries are saying no. That's going to be the big theme of my part of the presentation, is saying no. You never need to validate your decision either. You don't ever have to explain that to anybody of why you're saying no. Not allowing other people to manipulate your feelings or your decisions. Manipulation is never okay, and your decisions and your feelings belong to you and you alone. Also, be kind to yourself. I am still actively working on this one. Sometimes I'm just so hard on myself, but I'm really working on being kind to myself and pumping yourself up, right? It's okay to meet your standards, but not other people's standards. And even if you think sometimes that you fall short, you should still just be kind to yourself, because good things will grow from kindness. Next. Okay, now we have some examples of physical boundaries, okay? Saying no to someone when they want to hug you, but you're really not the type of huggy kind of person. That's okay, right? Saying no is a physical boundary. You can do so in a polite way. Also, we've been taught that it's polite to shake someone's hand when they extend theirs to yours. I get that concept, but in the wake of COVID and maintaining health, I definitely say it's okay to politely refuse a handshake. Just kind of like, if you have a little wave instead, I think that's okay, right? Sharing is caring, but not when it comes to bacteria and viruses. No thanks. So another example of a physical boundary is to allow yourself space, like physical space, when people are standing too close, right? They call it a personal bubble for a reason. And your bubble can be this big, or it can be this big. It's up to you. Okay, if you need to just kind of step back and say you're in my bubble, that's okay. That's a physical boundary. Okay, next, please. Okay, spiritual boundaries. So spiritual boundaries have been being crossed since the dawn of time. Okay, but I'm here to tell you that you have the right to believe in anything you want, whether it is God or some other deity or nothing at all. It is your right to have your own belief and not feel pressured or guilted by others. When my son was young and in elementary school, he was bullied for not attending church. It wasn't okay then. It's not okay now. So believe what you want. It's your right. Next slide, please. Okay, so next we're going to talk about boundaries for different types of relationships, such as our parents, children, friends, partners, and coworkers. Next. So boundaries for parents can be especially tricky because I feel like it's natural for us to want to obey and respect our parents. However, you can still respect your parents while keeping your boundaries in the light, okay? You have the right to privacy. Our parents do not need to know all the details of our lives. My parents certainly don't know my details. I hope I don't know all my kids' details. We're allowed to have privacy, okay? Also, you can choose your own path in life, okay? So maybe your dad is like this amazing orthopedic surgeon and he wants you to follow in his footsteps and be a little mini orthopedic surgeon. But I mean, you're not into surgery because you love to dance, okay? That's your path. Follow your path in life. That's a boundary, right? You want to be a dancer, be a dancer, okay? So also, it is important to set specific ground rules for your parents when it comes to your children. And I know that not everybody on this call has children, but some of us do. And if you don't have children, but especially listen, your parents are going to try to feed them a lot of candy and buy them things at the store and spoil them. And that's okay if you say it's okay. Okay, but if you set that boundary, no, and say, no, mom, my child's not allowed to have candy after 3 p.m. Whatever. It's your right to set that boundary. Okay, as a young mom, I was pretty young when I had kids, and I struggled with this one a lot. My mom was constantly crossing boundaries. As the children gotten older, it's gotten better, but that's because I learned to stand firm. Next, please. Speaking of children, okay, they need boundaries also, right? It can be challenging to set boundaries within our own children because society tells us how we should and shouldn't raise them. But it's your choice to raise them how you want. As long as they are healthy, it's your choice, okay? I'm here to tell you it's okay to tell your kids no when you feel it's necessary, even if somebody else doesn't think so, okay? Fit throwing, not welcome, okay? Also, you are allowed to have your own things like clothes, your own food, your own drinks. You don't have to share every little thing with your child if you don't want to, right? Too often as parents, we feel like we can't have things for ourselves, like we have to share everything, but you definitely don't. It's also very important to have mutual respect with your children, right? Allow them to set their own boundaries and teach them it's okay to say no in a respectful way. Of course, there are fine lines between these. A child might say, no, I'm not going to school, but I mean, you have to go to school. So there's a fine line, but still, an example of what I'm talking about is, let's say I'm a mom who loves basketball, okay? And my son played basketball for years. This is not a true story. My boy is a football player, but let's say he played basketball for years, but then all of a sudden decided he doesn't want to play basketball anymore and he wants to try soccer. Allowing your child to do that is respecting their boundaries and their wishes in a healthy way, right? So, okay, next slide, please. Okay, so boundaries for friends include, once again, being able to say no without feeling pressure or guilt. Peer pressure is so real. It's so real, and it is not cool at all. Okay, you're allowed to be an individual with your own ideas, interests, and passions, even if they're not the same as your friends, right? Too many times we feel like we need to follow our friends into their interests, but you don't have to. You are your own person, not who your group of friends are or want you to be. Next, please. Okay, boundaries for our significant others. So relationship boundaries, I feel like, are also one of the most tricky boundaries, because we want to make our partners happy, but we don't want to sacrifice ourselves to do so, okay? So no means no, and I know I've said that quite a bit during this presentation, but that's my theme here with boundaries. No, just say no. Okay, but in your relationship, setting boundaries for maintaining your own interests, hobbies, passions, and ideas is crucial. It can be very easy to get distracted from your own desires and wants because you want to make your partner happy, right? So you also, in your relationship with your significant other, have the right to feel safe, cared for, and respected at all times. If you don't feel like you are feeling safe, cared for, or respected, being able to open up the communication with your partner is a boundary that I think is just one of the most important ones ever. Okay, next, please. Boundaries for coworkers and the workplace. Again, all these boundaries start with respect, okay? So even if you are low on the totem pole, so to speak, you are still worthy of respect and decency. Just because somebody makes more money than you or has a higher position does not give them the right to treat you badly. Always remember that. Okay, you have the right to safety at all times, regardless of what kind of a job you have, okay? So let's say you're working at a construction site and you are asked to dig trenches in the scorching heat. You start digging, and then after a little while, you feel the heat getting to you. Maybe you're feeling lightheaded or nauseous, okay? But you want to dig these trenches, but you have the right to step back and say, no, this is making me feel unsafe. I need a break, and we'll see if I can resume after I take my break. That's a really important boundary for safety. So another boundary for coworkers is doing your job and not the job of others. So it can be easy to get taken advantage of if you're like me and you prefer to stay busy. I always wanted to take on more because that's my personality most of the time anyways. You know, I let Nick and Phil do the slideshow because, you know, technology and me, no. But anyways, so you can get taken advantage of really easily if you're not careful. So if you don't want to do other people's jobs or help them, you don't have to. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so lastly, how are personal boundaries a form of self-care? Okay, so personal boundaries help us maintain healthy mental and physical health. Being able to say no allows us to feel a sense of individuality while giving ourselves the space and energy we need to do things for ourselves and others. Without healthy boundaries, we can feel drained or used or taken advantage of. You know, the bottom line is that boundaries are vital to our well-being. So lastly, I ask you this, and if you want to put it in the chat, you can, or if you want it to be rhetorical, you can do that also. Where do you feel you might be able to improve upon healthy boundaries within your own lives? And with that, I'll take it back to Phil or Nick. And yes, thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you, Steph. Phil, is it okay if I try and share my screen again? I just want to see really quickly if this will work because I got points that. All right.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. Can you all see this okay? All right. Thank you, Steph, for that. That was awesome, and I appreciate it. I just want to kind of talk about really quickly some takeaways from this presentation. So first and foremost, self-care is a practice. It's what we do to achieve wellness as a state of being. And so this is something that's kind of important to to keep in mind because, you know, it is a practice. It's not a perfect practice either. So self-care can also be thought of as maybe a pathway created by strategies that lead to wellness and thus thriving. So, and then there's also this like no one size fits all. I think we've all seen that after, throughout this presentation, but each person's practice is personal and they have to create it and construct it themselves. And so here are some strategies for kind of incorporating these, self-care routines and whatever that might look like for you. Every conscious decision, first and foremost, is an act of courage because you are deciding to do something new and it may be uncomfortable and it may not be easy. But even though it's not easy, it's definitely worth doing. At the heart of self-care and wellness lies this kind of idea of empowerment. There's this realization that you choose every moment, and that means you can become a conscious creator of that choice. You can choose what and how you take care of yourself, and it's not really up to anyone else to decide. And this awareness is part of a larger knowing of thyself, if you will, and it can be learned through exploration and sometimes trial and error. You might just get it wrong the first few times, and I know that I tend to have to really go through it all and make a lot of mistakes to find out what works right for me, and that's okay. So I really just would like to say that you should everyone individually, move at a conscientious pace that honors you. There's no perfect pace that's going to be right for everyone. And remember that there's always time to make small changes to achieve your goals. Release this idea that your practice must be perfect. If you don't go to the gym every day, that's all right. if you have to skip a session or you go to bed late or whatever happens, that's okay, because there's still time to take care of yourself even better tomorrow. And there's also ways that you can kind of assess where you're at, including this self-care assessment that we'll include in this resource guide that we're putting together. And it just kind of goes through different areas of self-care and wellness that you might want to consider focusing on. And it's a pretty powerful tool, actually. Another thing that I will be adding to the resource guide is SMART goals. And these are just specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, or reasonable, and time-bound goals that can help you decide where and how you want to be moving in your self-care practice and help you achieve, the kind of life and the kind of well-being that you want. So I also, like I've mentioned a few times, this resource guide that we're putting together. So you can go ahead and take a photo of the slide if you want. We have a QR code, and also there's a link on there that will take you right to the form. And this is just a guide that we've kind of taken everything from this presentation, different resources, and put it right into one space for you. And like it says, there's resources and activities for just further exploration. See what you like and see what kind of works for you. I'm going to go ahead and drop that link in the chat as well, because I have that prepared. And on that guide, so on the form that I've sent out, there's just 2 questions to fill out. One is there's multiple questions if you choose, but there's only 2 required questions. One is just supplying your email, and also it asks if you've learned something new today or not. And then you are welcome to send that, and then as soon as the guide is done, we'll send it out. So I kind of have a challenge for you all, for everyone here. It's a kind of a dare to self-care. Excuse me. So self-care is a daily and even moment-to-moment practice, and we would like to just challenge you to do something new. So try to incorporate a new self-care strategy from this presentation, or when you get the resource guide. Try it out for just a week. And if you like it and it works for you, then try it out for a month. And after that month, you're welcome to share with us what you did and how it worked. When I send out that resource guide, if you sign up for it, I will also send a form that gives you a space to to share with us. And I would just love to know that this presentation made an impact in your life somehow, yeah, especially in your well-being and the way you care for yourself. And I just also want to thank you. I want to thank everyone, everyone who I worked with to put this presentation together, everyone who has attended, everyone who even was able to come, even if it was a little late. That was my fault. I'm sorry, my AmeriCorps members. But thank you so much for just being a part of this. Thank you for being with us all here, engaged and present. And thank you also really for being good to yourself, because you really deserve it. You do. So feel free to take a moment to fill out this, take a photo of this slide, or click on the link in the chat. And thank you all so much. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen. And if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to share. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Hope you all have a good day.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right now too. Stop.